I never thought I'd be thanking my sister for stealing my fiancé. But life has a strange way of working out. When that wedding invitation arrived with both their names embossed in gold, I wanted to burn it. Instead, I RSVP'd yes and found the perfect date. At the reception, when my sister grabbed the microphone and announced, "She's the one he settled for first," I never expected what happened next. My date stood up, champagne in hand, and changed everything. Before I tell you how this whole disaster turned into the best thing that ever happened to me, let me know where you're watching from the comments. If you've ever dealt with family betrayal or found love after heartbreak, this story is for you. Hit that like button and subscribe because, trust me, the revenge in this story is sweeter than wedding cake. My name is Paige Williams, and 6 months ago, I had what anyone would call a perfect life. At 29, I was a senior marketing executive at one of Chicago's top firms, living in a beautiful downtown apartment with my fiancé of 1 year, Cameron Hayes. We'd been together for 5 years before he proposed, and I still remember every detail of that day. It was sunset at Lake Michigan. Cameron had arranged a private picnic on the beach, complete with fairy lights strung between portable poles stuck in the sand. He'd prepared all my favorite foods and brought a bottle of the champagne we'd shared on our first date. When he got down on one knee, the last rays of sunlight caught the diamond ring, sending prisms dancing across his nervous face. "Paige," he'd said, voice trembling slightly, "you make ordinary moments extraordinary. I want a lifetime of those moments with you. Will you marry me?" I'd said yes through tears, and we'd spent the evening planning our future between kisses and champagne. That memory used to be my happy place. Now it felt like watching a movie about strangers. My younger sister Vanessa and I had always been close, despite our competitive relationship. Growing up, she was the pretty one with effortless charm, while I was the responsible achiever. We balanced each other out, or so I thought. Our parents, Linda and Robert, had raised us to be supportive of each other, though they sometimes unintentionally fueled our rivalry by comparing us. "Vanessa has your artistic talent, Linda," our father would say. "But Paige has my business sense." I never worried about competition when it came to men. Vanessa and I had completely different types. At least, that's what I believed until I returned early from a business trip to New York, hoping to surprise Cameron. I still had my key to his apartment, of course. We'd been planning to move in together after the wedding, but still kept our separate places. When I opened the door, the apartment was empty, but Cameron's phone sat on the coffee table, buzzing with incoming messages. I wasn't a snooping type, but something made me look. The preview messages on the screen made my stomach drop. "Miss you already. Last night was amazing. Can't wait to tell everyone about us. Asterisk." The sender? Vanessa Redheart. I sat there, phone in hand, for what felt like hours. When Cameron finally returned with coffee and bagels, his face went from shock to guilt in seconds. "You're home early," he said, setting down the breakfast bag with shaking hands. "Apparently not early enough," I replied, my voice surprisingly calm despite the earthquake happening inside me. "How long?" "Paige, it's not what you think."
"How
long?" He collapsed onto the couch across from me, running his hands through his hair. 3 months. "It just happened, Paige. We didn't mean to hurt you." "You didn't mean to hurt me? You're sleeping with my sister." What followed was a blur of accusations, weak excuses, and painful revelations. Cameron claimed he'd run into Vanessa at a bar while I was on a business trip. One drink led to talking, which led to a connection he couldn't explain. The betrayal cut deeper with each detail. "I was going to tell you," he insisted. "I just didn't know how." "Were you going to tell me before or after our wedding?" I asked, twisting the engagement ring off my finger and placing it on the table between us. The family fallout was immediate and messy. My mother Linda tried to play mediator, which only made things worse. "These things happen, honey," she said during our first family conversation about the situation. "The heart wants what it wants." My father was furious, refusing to speak to Cameron and barely acknowledging Vanessa. "No daughter of mine would do this to her sister," he'd shouted during a particularly tense family dinner where Vanessa had announced they were officially dating. We can't help who we fall in love with, Vanessa had said, reaching for Cameron's hand across the table. I hope someday you'll understand and forgive us, Paige. I stopped attending family gatherings after that. The betrayal was too fresh, the wound too deep. I retreated into work and avoided calls from both my sister and my ex-fiancé. Friends tried to help, but most didn't know what to say. How do you comfort someone whose sister stole their future husband? The engagement ring sat in my dresser drawer, a painful reminder of promises broken. Some days I thought about selling it, other days about throwing it into Lake Michigan where it all began. But mostly I tried not to think about it at all. The 6 months following the breakup were a slow process of healing and rebuilding. I moved to a new apartment, throwing myself into decorating as therapy. I accepted a promotion at work that required longer hours but provided a welcome distraction. My boss, Jeffrey Parker, had been surprisingly understanding, offering flexibility when I needed it. Heartbreak is the worst performance killer, he'd said. Take the time you need, but know this corner office is waiting when you're ready. I was grateful for the support, but the person who truly saved me during this time was my best friend, Natalie Reynolds. She showed up at my door the day after the breakup with ice cream, wine, and a fierce loyalty that got me through the darkest moments. We're going to burn his clothes, change your hair, and book a trip somewhere with gorgeous men and strong cocktails, she'd announced, already pulling items from my closet that reminded her of Cameron. I didn't burn his clothes, I donated them instead, or book that trip, work was too busy. But I did start seeing Dr. Morgan Bennett, a therapist Natalie had recommended. Our weekly sessions became an anchor in my chaotic emotional state. Betrayal from two people you trust completely creates a unique kind of trauma, Dr. Bennett explained. Give yourself permission to feel everything without judgment. I was trying to date again, accepting occasional setups from well-meaning friends, but trust didn't come easily anymore. I'd find myself analyzing text messages for hidden meanings or questioning innocent comments. One promising connection ended when I accused him of being interested in a waitress who was simply doing her job. I wasn't ready, but I was trying. Then came the invitation. It arrived on a Tuesday morning. A cream-colored envelope with elegant gold lettering addressed to Ms. Paige Williams and guest. The paper was thick and expensive, with a subtle floral pattern embossed around the edges. Inside, the invitation was equally elaborate. Together with their families, Vanessa Williams and Cameron Hayes request the honor of your presence as they unite in marriage. The wedding was just 5 weeks away. 5 weeks. They'd been together for 9 months? And tucked inside was a handwritten note on Vanessa's personalized stationery. Paige, I hope you can be happy for us. It would mean everything to have my sister standing with me on the most important day of my life. Love always, Vanessa *. I called Natalie immediately, barely able to form words through my sobs. They invited me to their wedding, I managed to say when she answered. Who invited you to their wedding? Natalie asked, confusion clear in her voice. Vanessa and Cameron.
What?
Let me come over. Don't do anything until I get there. Natalie arrived 30 minutes later, took one look at the invitation now crumpled on my counter, and poured us both a generous glass of wine despite it being barely noon. This is either the most tone-deaf thing I've ever seen or a deliberate power move, she said, examining the elegant invitation. Either way, you're not going. But as the day wore on, and in the weeks that followed, the pressure mounted. My mother called daily, her voice increasingly desperate. Please, Paige. This rift in the family is breaking my heart. Your attendance would show such maturity and forgiveness. Even my father, who had been my strongest ally, seemed to be softening his stance. I don't like it any more than you do, he told me during a private lunch. But she's still your sister and my daughter. I have to walk her down the aisle. He squeezed my hand across the table. You don't have to come if it's too painful. I'll support whatever you decide. But my cousin Diana's call was the tipping point. Always the family gossip. She couldn't wait to tell me what everyone was saying. The whole family is talking about whether you'll show up, she said with barely concealed excitement. Aunt Carol is convinced you'll make a scene, but Uncle Phil bet $50 you won't even attend, because you're still heartbroken. That's when I made my decision. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of thinking I was still devastated. I wouldn't be the bitter ex who couldn't face seeing her former fiancé happy. I'd go to the wedding, head held high, showing everyone that Paige Williams had moved on. The problem was I hadn't. Not really. Natalie was horrified when I told her my decision to attend the wedding. "Have you lost your mind?" she demanded, pacing around my living room. "This is masochism, not maturity. I need to do this," I insisted. "I need to show them all that I'm fine." Natalie stopped pacing and fixed me with a look. "Then we need to make sure you're better than fine. You need to be absolutely spectacular." What followed was what Natalie called Operation Glow Up. She created a comprehensive plan for the weeks leading up to the wedding, complete with a calendar and progress tracking. "If you're determined to walk into the lion's den, you're going to do it looking like a goddess and accompanied by the hottest man we can find," she declared. First on the agenda was shopping for the perfect dress. We hit every boutique in Chicago's Gold Coast, searching for something that struck the delicate balance between elegant and sexy. We finally found it at a small designer shop. A crimson silk gown with a subtle side slit and an open back. It was sophisticated but undeniably attention-grabbing. "Red is perfect," Natalie said as I twirled in front of the mirror. "It says, 'I'm not in mourning,' and 'look what you're missing' simultaneously." Next came the physical transformation. Natalie booked us for weekly spa treatments, including facials, massages, and the works. I started waking up at 5 a.m. for sessions with a personal trainer Natalie knew. By week 3, I was already seeing definition in my arms and feeling stronger both physically and mentally. A trip to an exclusive salon resulted in subtle highlights and a fresh cut that framed my face perfectly. The stylist, Antonio, tattooed over my previously neglected hair. "Breakups are terrible for the follicles, darling," he said as he worked his magic. "But men come and go. Great hair is forever." As I watched my external transformation in the mirror each day, I couldn't help questioning the process. Was I really healing, or just creating an elaborate mask to hide my pain? Was revenge through physical appearance the answer, or was I playing into superficial values? Dr. Bennett helped me process these feelings during our sessions. "There's nothing wrong with wanting to look your best," she assured me. "The problem would be if you believed your worth was determined by his reaction to your appearance. This event is triggering for you. Having some armor is reasonable." The final piece of the plan was finding the perfect date. Natalie suggested everyone from her cousin's roommate to a model she'd worked with on a marketing campaign. I vetoed them all. If I was going to bring someone, it needed to be authentic. I didn't want to hire an escort or beg a friend to pretend. That felt too desperate. And then, 3 weeks before the wedding, I met Maxwell Thompson. It happened at a charity auction for Chicago Children's Hospital. My company had purchased a table, and as the marketing executive, I was expected to attend. I was making small talk with a client when I literally bumped into him, spilling champagne down the front of his clearly expensive suit. "I'm so sorry," I exclaimed, mortified, grabbing cocktail napkins to dab at the stain. "Don't worry about it," he said with a laugh. "This suit needed to loosen up anyway. It's been stiff all evening." Maxwell Thompson was tall, with dark hair and the kind of smile that reached his eyes. He introduced himself as an architect who had recently returned to Chicago after several years working internationally. "I've been away so long, I feel like a tourist in my own city," he admitted as we continued talking long after the champagne incident was forgotten. There was something immediately comfortable about our conversation. No awkward pauses or forced topics. We discovered mutual connections. He knew my college roommate's brother and shared favorite spots around the city. We both loved the same obscure bookstore in Wicker Park. When the event ended, Maxwell asked for my number. "I'd love to continue this conversation over coffee sometime." Coffee turned into dinner the following evening, which turned into a Saturday spent exploring an architecture exhibition at the Art Institute. By our third date, I felt myself genuinely smiling again, not the forced version I'd been wearing for months. It was during that third date, over dessert at a small Italian restaurant, that I finally told him about the wedding situation. "My sister's marrying my ex-fiancé in 2 weeks," I said, waiting for the awkwardness to descend. Instead, Maxwell looked thoughtful. That must be incredibly difficult. Are you planning to attend? I nodded, explaining my complicated reasons for going. When I finished, Maxwell reached across the table and took my hand. I have a proposition, he said. Take me as your date. I stared at him. We barely know each other. Why would you want to subject yourself to my family drama? First, I'm actually enjoying getting to know you, so this gives me an excuse for another date. Second, I'm excellent at charming parents and making exes jealous. It's a skill I rarely get to use these days. His playful confidence made me laugh, and before I knew it, we were planning our strategy over tiramisu and espresso. Maxwell suggested coordinating our outfits, couples who color coordinate look established, and rehearsing basic details about each other's lives. Your favorite book is Pride and Prejudice. Mine is The Great Gatsby. As our plotting grew more elaborate, I felt a twinge of guilt. Was I using Maxwell? Despite our genuine connection, I was bringing him to this wedding for strategic purposes. When I confessed this concern, Maxwell's response surprised me. Paige, I'm going into this with open eyes. Yes, there's an element of performance to it, but that doesn't mean what's developing between us isn't real. Sometimes the best relationships start under strange circumstances. As the wedding approached, I found myself looking forward to my time with Maxwell more than I was dreading the ceremony itself. Something genuine was forming beneath our strategic alliance, something that made me wonder if Vanessa and Cameron's betrayal might accidentally lead to something wonderful. The wedding weekend arrived with painful swiftness. Vanessa and Cameron had planned a full 3 days of events at a luxury resort outside Chicago, welcome drinks on Friday, the rehearsal dinner Saturday, and a family breakfast Sunday morning before the afternoon ceremony. You don't have to attend everything, Natalie reminded me during our final pep talk. The main event is enough torture. But Maxwell and I decided to go all in. If we're doing this, let's commit fully, he said. Besides, the more comfortable we appear together beforehand, the more convincing our relationship will seem at the wedding. Friday evening's welcome drinks were at the resort's rooftop bar. Maxwell and I arrived fashionably late, giving me time to take deep breaths in the elevator and remember Dr. Bennett's advice. Focus on your breathing when anxiety rises. 5 counts in, 7 counts out. The moment we stepped onto the rooftop, I spotted them. Vanessa in a white cocktail dress, laughing at something Cameron was saying to a group of guests. They looked like the perfect couple from a distance. It wasn't until Maxwell squeezed my hand that I realized I'd been digging my nails into his palm. You've got this, he whispered. Let's get a drink first. We made it halfway to the bar before my mother spotted us and rushed over, arms outstretched. Paige, you came, Linda exclaimed, embracing me with unusual enthusiasm. She pulled back to examine Maxwell with undisguised curiosity. And who is this? Mom, this is Maxwell Thompson. Maxwell, my mother, Linda Williams. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Williams, Maxwell said, turning on the charm I'd come to recognize during our time together. Paige speaks so highly of you. My mother practically glowed under his attention. Please call me Linda. How did you two meet? Paige hasn't mentioned anyone new. As Maxwell launched into our champagne spill story, making it sound far more charming than my clumsy reality, I caught sight of Cameron watching us from across the terrace. Our eyes met briefly before he looked away, leaning down to whisper something to Vanessa. She turned immediately, her expression cycling from surprise to assessment to forced cheerfulness as she headed our way. Paige. You made it, she exclaimed, air kissing near my cheek. And with a friend. How lovely. Maxwell Thompson, he introduced himself, extending his hand. I'm Paige's boyfriend. Congratulations on your engagement. Boyfriend. We hadn't discussed using that label, but it felt right in the moment. Vanessa's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Thank you, she said, her eyes darting between us. Cameron, come meet Paige's boyfriend. Cameron approached slowly, his usual confidence notably diminished. Good to see you, Paige, he said awkwardly. It means a lot that you came. Wouldn't miss it. I replied with a sweetness that made my mother raise her eyebrows. Maxwell extended his hand. Maxwell Thompson. I've heard so much about you. The men shook hands, Cameron visibly assessing Maxwell as they did. I could practically see the comparison happening behind his eyes, and from his expression, Maxwell was coming out ahead. The rest of the evening was a careful dance of polite conversation and strategic positioning. Maxwell charmed everyone he met, from my elderly great-aunt Mildred to Cameron's college roommates. I caught Cameron watching us several times, particularly when Maxwell made me laugh or placed his hand casually on the small of my back. By the time we returned to our separate hotel rooms, we weren't actually at that stage yet. Despite the boyfriend label, I was emotionally exhausted but surprisingly triumphant. That went better than expected, I told Maxwell as he walked me to my door. You were amazing, he said. But tomorrow will be more intense. The rehearsal dinner is smaller, more intimate. He was right. Saturday's rehearsal dinner brought the core wedding party together in the resort's private dining room. I wasn't in the wedding party, of course, but as immediate family, I was expected to attend. The seating arrangement placed Maxwell and me directly across from Cameron's parents, who had always adored me. Paige, darling, Cameron's mother Margaret embraced me warmly. You look wonderful. We've missed you so much. Her husband Gerald nodded in agreement. The house isn't the same without your Sunday visits. He glanced toward Vanessa, who was busy directing the catering staff. Some things changed too quickly for an old man like me. Their obvious preference for me over Vanessa created a palpable tension that only increased when the speeches began. Traditional rehearsal dinner toasts became an exercise in careful omission, with no one quite knowing how to reference the couple's beginning without mentioning the uncomfortable truth. Cameron's best man Trevor eventually saved the situation with humor. I've known Cameron since college, and he's always been the most decisive guy I know, except when it comes to the restaurant menu or, apparently, the Williams family. The awkward laughter that followed broke some of the tension, but I noticed Cameron's forced smile and the way Vanessa's hand tightened around her champagne glass. Something wasn't quite right between them. This became even more apparent during Sunday morning's family breakfast. Maxwell and I were sharing a table with my father when Cameron's parents joined us, pointedly choosing our table over the one where Vanessa sat with her bridesmaids. How's work, Paige? Gerald asked. Still killing it in marketing? As I updated them on my recent promotion, I caught my father watching me with a mixture of pride and sadness. When the others went to the buffet for seconds, he leaned in close. I want you to know how proud I am of you, Pumpkin, he said, using his childhood nickname for me. The way you're handling all this, it shows remarkable strength. Thanks, Dad, I said, unexpectedly moved. It means a lot. I'm still disappointed in Vanessa, he admitted quietly. I'm trying to support her because she's my daughter, but what she did, it's not how we raised you girls. I know, Dad. His eyes moved to Maxwell, who was chatting animatedly with my cousin across the room. This new fellow seems like a good man. Much better fit for you than Cameron ever was, if you ask me. Before I could respond, Cameron approached our table, looking uncharacteristically nervous. Mr. Williams, he said, nodding to my father, who returned the greeting with minimal warmth. Paige, could I talk to you for a minute? Privately? My father tensed, but I placed a reassuring hand on his arm. It's fine, Dad. I followed Cameron to a quiet corner of the terrace, maintaining a careful distance between us. What is it, Cameron? He ran a hand through his hair, a familiar nervous gesture. I just wanted to make sure you're okay. With all of this, I'm fine, I said, more coldly than I intended. Maxwell and I are having a lovely weekend. Yeah, he seems great. Cameron's tone suggested the opposite. How long have you been together? Does it matter? No, I guess not. He looked toward Vanessa, who was watching us intently from across the room. I just want you to be happy, Paige. You deserve that. Something in his voice made me really look at him for the first time. The man I'd planned to marry looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and a tension in his shoulders I recognized from our most stressful times together. Are you happy, Cameron? I found myself asking. The question clearly caught him off guard. Of course, he said too quickly. Why wouldn't I be? It's my wedding day. Before I could respond, Vanessa appeared at his side, slipping her arm through his with a too tight grip. What are you two talking about so seriously? She asked with forced lightness. Just catching up, Cameron said. I should get ready. Big day. As he walked away, Vanessa lingered, her smile fading once he was out of earshot. He's mine now, she said quietly. Whatever you said to him just now won't change that. I was taken aback by the hostility in her voice. I don't want him back, Vanessa. Sure you don't, she scoffed, eyeing Maxwell across the room. Your new boyfriend is quite the upgrade. Convenient timing. This isn't a competition, I said, though we both knew that in Vanessa's mind, everything had always been exactly that. She laughed without humor. It's always been a competition, Paige. You just never noticed because you were always winning. Well, not anymore. As she walked away, I felt a wave of sadness replace the anger I'd been nursing for months. What had happened to us? We used to build blanket forts together and defend each other from playground bullies. Now we were exchanging veiled hostilities at her wedding to my ex-fiancé. That night, unable to sleep, I texted Maxwell. I'm not sure I can go through with this tomorrow. He responded immediately. Want to talk? I'm still awake. 20 minutes later, we were sitting in the empty hotel bar, nursing nightcaps and my doubts. I thought this would be satisfying, I confessed. Showing up looking great, with you on my arm, making them jealous. But it just feels sad. Maxwell considered this, swirling the whiskey in his glass. Can I tell you something? Something I haven't shared before. I nodded, curious at his serious tone. 3 years ago, I was engaged too, he said. Her name was Rebecca. 2 months before our wedding, I found out she'd been seeing her coworker for almost a year. Maxwell, I'm so sorry. He shrugged, but I could see the old pain in his eyes. I declined the wedding invitation. We both laughed at that, breaking the tension. The point is, he continued, I understand betrayal. And I understand wanting to show them you're better off. But at some point, you have to decide if you're there for them or for yourself. What do you mean? Are you attending this wedding to prove something to them, or to prove something to yourself? I considered his question carefully. Maybe both? At first it was about showing them I wasn't destroyed. But now, I think I need to be there for me. To close this chapter properly. Maxwell reached across the table and took my hand. Then that's why we'll go. Not for revenge, but for closure. When he walked me back to my room this time, our goodnight took the form of a kiss that had nothing to do with wedding strategies and everything to do with the genuine connection that had been building between us. For the record, Maxwell said as he pulled away, I'd be here even if there was no wedding. I'm in this for you, Paige Williams. As I fell asleep that night, I realized my motivation had shifted. Tomorrow wasn't about getting back at Vanessa and Cameron. It was about saying goodbye to what had been and embracing whatever came next. The morning of the wedding dawned with picture-perfect weather, as if the universe were blessing the union I'd spent months resenting. Natalie arrived at my hotel room early, armed with makeup supplies and moral support. Final chance to back out, she said, laying out her professional-grade cosmetics on the bathroom counter. We could be on a plane to anywhere by noon. I'm staying, I said with more confidence than I'd felt the entire weekend. But thank you for the escape option. Natalie studied my face. Something's different. You seem lighter. I had a good talk with Maxwell last night about closure and moving forward. Uh-huh, she said, a knowing smile playing on her lips as she began working on my makeup. Just a good talk, HM? Well, maybe a good talk and a good kiss, I admitted, feeling a blush rise to my cheeks. I knew it, Natalie squealed. I could tell from the moment I met him at the dress fitting that this was more than a revenge date. He couldn't take his eyes off you. As Natalie worked her magic, transforming my appearance with expert contouring and subtle highlights, I found myself genuinely excited about the day ahead, not because of the wedding, but because of who would be by my side. When Maxwell knocked on my door 2 hours later, his reaction made all the primping worth it. He actually took a step back, his eyes widening as he took in the full effect of the red dress, professional makeup, and elegant updo Natalie had created. "You are absolutely stunning," he said, his voice hushed with genuine awe. He looked pretty impressive himself in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit with a red pocket square that matched my dress exactly. The coordinated look was subtle but effective, marking us clearly as a couple. "Ready for this?" he asked, offering his arm. "As I'll ever be." The ceremony was being held in the resort's garden, with white chairs arranged in neat rows facing an elaborate floral arch. Maxwell and I were escorted to seats in the third row on the bride's side, much more prominent than I'd expected. I could feel eyes on us as we took our places, whispers following in our wake. The garden filled quickly with guests in spring finery. Cameron's groomsmen took their places, followed by Cameron himself, looking handsome but tense in his tuxedo. The string quartet began playing, signaling the start of the procession. Bridesmaids in pale pink floated down the aisle one by one. Then the music changed to the traditional wedding march, and everyone stood, turning to watch Vanessa appear on our father's arm. I had to admit, she looked beautiful in her fitted lace gown, her blonde hair swept up in an elaborate style adorned with tiny flowers. Our father's expression was a complicated mixture of pride and something else I couldn't quite name as he walked her slowly toward Cameron. The ceremony itself was brief, but traditional. I noticed Cameron stumble slightly over his vows, while Vanessa delivered hers with practiced perfection, her voice carrying clearly across the garden. When the minister asked if anyone objected to the union, I felt Maxwell's hand tighten around mine, and several guests glanced nervously in my direction. But the moment passed without incident, and soon they were pronounced husband and wife. "You okay?" Maxwell whispered as we watched them walk back down the aisle together. "Surprisingly, yes," I replied, realizing it was true. The knot of anger and hurt that had lived in my chest for months had loosened, not completely gone but significantly diminished. The cocktail hour that followed on the terrace was my first real test. Without the structure of the ceremony, guests were free to approach and comment. My mother's friends descended first, their curiosity thinly veiled as concern. "Such a brave face you're putting on, dear," said my mother's best friend Carol, patting my arm condescendingly. "Not brave at all," I replied smoothly. "Just genuinely happy to be here with Maxwell." Maxwell excelled at deflecting awkward comments with charm, steering conversations away from the past and toward neutral topics. His protective presence beside me made everything more bearable. The most surprising interaction came from Cameron's best friend Trevor, who sought me out while Maxwell was getting us fresh drinks. "I owe you an apology, Paige," he said, looking genuinely remorseful. "I knew about them before you did. I should have told you. It wasn't your responsibility," I said, though his admission stung.
"Still,
"You deserved better from all of us." He glanced toward Cameron, who was posing for photos with Vanessa. For what it's worth, I'm not convinced he made the right choice. Before I could respond, I overheard Vanessa's bridesmaids nearby, their voices carrying just enough for me to catch snippets. "Can you believe she actually showed up? With that guy? Has to be hired. No way she found someone that gorgeous so quickly. Cameron keeps watching them. Vanessa's going to lose it if he doesn't stop." Maxwell returned, handing me a fresh champagne and subtly positioning himself between me and the gossiping bridesmaids. "Ready to head in for dinner?" They're opening the ballroom. The reception space was undeniably beautiful, with crystal chandeliers, elaborate floral centerpieces, and twinkling fairy lights draped across the ceiling. I recognized many elements from my own Pinterest wedding boards, ideas I'd shared with both Cameron and Vanessa during happier times. Maxwell and I were seated at a table with my parents, my father's sister and her husband, and, surprisingly, Cameron's parents. A strategic seating arrangement that placed me with my allies rather than among Vanessa's friends. The bride and groom made their entrance to enthusiastic applause, taking their place at the elevated head table. Throughout dinner, I noticed Cameron's gaze repeatedly drifting to our table, though he quickly looked away whenever our eyes met. After the main course, the traditional toasts began. The best man and maid of honor both gave appropriately sentimental speeches, carefully navigating around the relationship's complicated beginning. I was just starting to relax when Vanessa suddenly stood and took the microphone from the maid of honor. "I want to say something too," she announced, her voice slightly affected by the champagne she'd been drinking steadily all evening. "Everyone here knows how much I love Cameron." An expectant hush fell over the room. This wasn't on the program. "What some of you might not know is the journey that brought us here," Vanessa continued, her gaze finding me in the crowd. "Sometimes the path to true love isn't straightforward. Sometimes you have to go through obstacles to find your perfect match." My stomach tightened as her meaning became clear. Maxwell's hand found mine under the table. "Cameron and I were meant to be together," she said, raising her glass. "Sometimes it takes a man a while to realize who he really belongs with. She might be the one he settled for first, but I'm the one he chose forever." Uncomfortable laughter rippled through the room as guests who knew the situation exchanged glances. Others, unaware of the background, simply looked confused. My mother gasped softly beside me, while my father's face darkened with anger. Before I could process what was happening, Maxwell was on his feet, champagne glass in hand. The room fell silent as he straightened his tie and cleared his throat. "May I?" he asked, directing his question to Cameron rather than Vanessa. After a moment of hesitation, Cameron nodded, looking both curious and apprehensive. "For those I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, I'm Maxwell Thompson, Paige's date this evening," he began, his voice warm and confident. "First, I'd like to congratulate the bride and groom. Marriage is a profound commitment, one that requires courage and faith." He paused, his smile never faltering. "I've only known Paige for a short time, but in that time, I've discovered a woman of extraordinary grace and strength. When she told me about this wedding, I was impressed by her decision to attend, to support her sister despite their complicated history." The room was utterly silent now, all eyes on Maxwell. "What Vanessa said is true in one respect," he continued. "Sometimes we don't recognize what's truly valuable until it's gone. But I have to disagree with her conclusion." He turned to look at me, his expression softening. "From where I'm standing, I'm not Paige's consolation prize. I'm her upgrade." Someone at the back of the room whistled, breaking the tension slightly. Maxwell wasn't finished. "For those who don't know me, I recently returned to Chicago after designing the Elwood Tower in London and the Sato Museum in Tokyo. My work was just featured in Architectural Digest last month, which I'm told some of you subscribe to." Recognition dawned on many faces. Maxwell Thompson wasn't just any architect. He was one of the rising stars in international architecture, something I hadn't fully appreciated until this moment. "But more importantly," he continued, "I'm the man lucky enough to be falling in love with Paige Williams. So let's raise a glass to new beginnings and to recognizing true value when we see it." The room erupted in applause as Maxwell sat down, many guests now looking at me with new interest and respect. Cameron appeared stunned, while Vanessa's face had flushed an angry red. "Was that too much?" Maxwell whispered to me as the band started playing, drawing attention away from our table. "It was perfect," I replied, feeling genuinely moved by his words. "Did you mean it? About falling in love?" His eyes met mine, serious despite his smile. "Every word." The reception continued with a first dance and cake cutting, but the atmosphere had shifted noticeably after Maxwell's speech. Guests kept approaching our table, many suddenly remembering they'd seen Maxwell's work or read the Architectural Digest feature. Several of Cameron's business associates seemed particularly eager to exchange cards with him. "You're quite the celebrity," I teased as another admirer walked away. "Hardly," Maxwell replied with a self-deprecating smile. "But architecture is a small world, and Chicago is where I started. People remember." What they also remembered, apparently, was the story of how Cameron had left me for Vanessa. With Maxwell's speech highlighting my grace in attending, the narrative was shifting. I overheard revised versions of the story circulating, with increasing sympathy toward me and raised eyebrows toward the newlyweds. Cameron seemed to notice the shift too. His earlier confidence had evaporated, replaced by a distracted demeanor that had him checking his phone and scanning the room rather than focusing on his bride. Vanessa, meanwhile, was working overtime to appear blissfully happy, her smile becoming more fixed with each passing hour. "I need to use the restroom," I told Maxwell during a brief lull in the music. "I'll be right back." The ladies' room was blissfully empty when I entered, giving me a moment of quiet to process the evening's events. I was touching up my lipstick when the door burst open and Vanessa stormed in, her wedding gown gathered in her fists to allow faster movement. "What the hell was that?" she demanded, letting the door swing shut behind her. "What was what?" I asked, deliberately calm as I recapped my lipstick. "Your boyfriend's little speech. Making Cameron look like he downgraded and turning my wedding into your public rehabilitation." I turned to face her fully. "Maxwell was defending me after you publicly insulted me at your own wedding reception. What did you expect?" "I expected you to sit there and take it like you always do," she snapped, her composure cracking. "You always have to be the perfect one, don't you? Perfect Paige, who everyone loves. Who never makes mistakes. Who makes me look bad just by existing." The raw pain in her voice caught me off guard. "Is that really how you see me? How could I not? Dad's favorite, mom's pride, straight-A student, successful career. Everything always comes so easily to you." "Easily?" I repeated, incredulous. "Vanessa, nothing in my life has come easily. I work incredibly hard for everything I have. And in case you've forgotten, my fiancé left me for my sister 6 months ago. That wasn't exactly a high point." "You had him for 5 years," she countered. "Do you know what it was like growing up as Paige Williams' little sister? Always in your shadow? Always the afterthought?" "Oh, you're Paige's sister? She's so accomplished." I stared at her, truly seeing the depth of her resentment for the first time. Had this always been there, simmering beneath our relationship? "So, you took Cameron to get back at me?" I asked quietly. "Was it even about him?" Vanessa's anger seemed to deflate slightly. "It wasn't like that. Not at first. He talked about you all the time, did you know that? Paige is so organized. Paige is so driven." I was sick of hearing it. Then one night he actually listened to me instead. Really saw me. She looked down at her elaborate gown, fingers twisting the delicate lace. I did fall in love with him. But yes, part of me was thrilled to finally have something you wanted. To be chosen over you for once. The honesty of her admission hung in the air between us, painful but strangely relieving. This wasn't about Cameron, not really. It was about years of perceived inequality, a competition I hadn't even known we were having. "I never saw you as less than me, Vanessa," I said finally. "Different, yes, but never less. It doesn't matter how you saw me. It matters how I felt." Her eyes filled with tears, mascara threatening to run. "And now I've ruined everything. My own wedding day, and I'm crying in the bathroom because I'm still jealous of my sister and her perfect new boyfriend." Against my better judgment, I found myself reaching for a tissue and handing it to her. "Your makeup will run." She took it with a watery laugh. Still looking out for me even now. "Old habits," I said with a small shrug. We stood there in silence for a moment, years of sisterhood and rivalry suspended between us. This wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something like understanding. "I should get back," Vanessa said finally. "They'll be looking for me." "Vanessa," I called as she reached the door. "I hope you and Cameron will be happy. I mean that." She paused, her back to me. "Your architect really loves you, you know. I can tell by the way he looks at you." She glanced over her shoulder. Cameron never looked at me that way. With that parting shot, equal parts concession and barb, she was gone, leaving me alone with thoughts I hadn't allowed myself to consider until now. Had Cameron ever looked at me that way? And more importantly, did I want Maxwell to keep looking at me that way? When I returned to the reception, Maxwell was deep in conversation with my father, both men laughing easily. The sight warmed something in me, a feeling of rightness I hadn't expected. "Everything okay?" Maxwell asked as I slipped back into my seat beside him. "Actually, yes," I said, realizing it was true. I think Vanessa and I just had our first honest conversation in years. Before I could elaborate, Cameron appeared at our table, his expression uncertain. Paige, could I have a word? Maxwell raised an eyebrow in question, but I nodded reassuringly. It's fine. I'll be right back. Cameron led me to a quiet corner of the terrace, the music from the reception a distant backdrop to the awkward silence between us. Your boyfriend seems like a good guy, he said finally. He is.
I'm glad.
You deserve that. Cameron shifted uncomfortably. Look, Paige, I know I hurt you badly. What Vanessa said in there, that's not how I see things. You were never someone I settled for. Then why did you leave? The question had burned in me for months, and suddenly I needed to know. He looked out at the dark gardens, gathering his thoughts. With you, everything was planned, structured. Our whole future mapped out. With Vanessa, it was exciting, unpredictable. I thought that's what I wanted. And now? His hesitation told me everything I needed to know. I made vows today. I'll honor them. I felt a surprising surge of pity for him. I hope you find happiness, Cameron. I really do. You too, Paige. He started to reach for my hand, then thought better of it. For what it's worth, I am sorry. For everything. As he walked away, I realized I felt nothing but relief. No lingering love, no desire to reconcile, not even much anger anymore. Just a clean, clear certainty that this chapter of my life was finally closing. Maxwell and I left the reception shortly after, declining to stay for the bouquet toss and grand exit. As we walked away from the ballroom, his hand warm in mine, the wedding music faded behind us. That was quite an exit we made, I said as we waited for the valet to bring his car around. Everyone will be talking about it tomorrow. Let them talk, Maxwell replied, pulling me closer as the cool evening air swirled around us. All that matters is what you think. I think, I said slowly, looking up at him, that this fake date turned into something very real. It was never fake for me, he admitted, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. From the moment you spilled champagne on my favorite suit, I was a goner. As we drove away from the resort, windows down and the warm spring air tousling our carefully styled hair, I found myself laughing with genuine joy for the first time in months. The wedding that I dreaded had somehow become the beginning of something new and unexpected. My sister's betrayal had led me here, to this moment, with this man who looked at me like I was something precious. Life had a strange way of working out after all. 1 month after the wedding, Maxwell and I were having dinner at his loft in downtown Chicago when my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Vanessa and Cameron are back from their honeymoon, I told him, reading the message. Apparently, there was some drama. Mom says they argued the entire time in Bora Bora and came back early. Maxwell passed me a glass of wine. Are you surprised? Not really, I admitted. Their relationship started with deceit. That's a shaky foundation. Over the past month, I'd received regular updates from my mother about the newlyweds' apparent troubles. According to family gossip, Vanessa had caught Cameron texting his ex-girlfriend during the reception, leading to their first married fight before they even left for their honeymoon. Do you want to talk about it? Maxwell asked, always sensitive to when family news might be triggering. Actually, no, I realized. Their problems aren't mine anymore. And they weren't. In the weeks since the wedding, I'd made a conscious decision to step back from the family drama. I still spoke to my parents regularly, but I declined invitations to events where Vanessa and Cameron would be present, explaining that while I wished them well, I needed time and space. Dr. Bennett had called this setting healthy boundaries. It's not about punishing them, she'd explained during our session the week after the wedding. It's about protecting your own well-being while you continue to heal. My relationship with Maxwell had deepened rapidly in that month. We spent most evenings together, alternating between his loft and my apartment. He'd introduced me to his close friends and taken me to his favorite hidden spots around Chicago. I'd learned that he sang off-key in the shower, preferred sci-fi novels to historical fiction, and could make incredible omelets, but somehow burned toast every single time. Small details that were building something real between us, something honest and strong that had nothing to do with revenge or appearances. I have something for you, Maxwell said now, pulling a small wrapped package from his pocket. What's this for? It's not my birthday. Open it and see. Inside was a key attached to a small silver keychain in the shape of an architectural compass. A key to my place, he explained. No pressure to use it, but I wanted you to know you're welcome anytime. The gesture touched me deeply. Unlike the whirlwind pace of my relationship with Cameron, which had been driven by societal expectations and timetables, Maxwell and I were building something at our own speed, with intention and care. 2 months later, I finally agreed to attend a family dinner that included Vanessa and Cameron. Maxwell offered to come with me, but I decided to go alone. This was something I needed to handle myself. Are you sure? My father asked when I arrived at my parents' house solo. We would have understood if you brought him. I'm sure, I said, squeezing his hand. Maxwell and I are solid. This isn't about him. It's about me being able to be in the same room as them without support. My relationship with my father had grown stronger through all of this. Our weekly lunch dates had become a fixture in my calendar, precious time when we could talk openly about everything from business to philosophy to family dynamics. I'm proud of you, Pumpkin, he said, using the childhood nickname that had once embarrassed me but now felt like a treasured connection to simpler times. The dinner itself was awkward but civil. Vanessa and Cameron arrived late, tension evident in their body language. They were trying to present a united front, but the strain showed in small ways. Interrupted sentences, sidelong glances, careful distance maintained between them at the table. I found myself watching them with detached curiosity rather than pain. Whatever happened in their marriage was their journey now, not mine. After dinner, Vanessa cornered me in the kitchen as I was helping our mother with dessert. Your boyfriend didn't come, she observed, leaning against the counter while I arranged cookies on a serving plate. His name is Maxwell, and no, he didn't. She twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit she'd apparently developed. Things going well with him? Very well, I said, deciding to offer an olive branch. How is Bora Bora? Beautiful. Expensive. Hot. She picked up a cookie, then set it back down without eating it. Cameron got food poisoning the second day. Spent 3 days in the bathroom. I couldn't help the small laugh that escaped. That's unfortunate. It pretty much set the tone for the trip. She hesitated, then added, Marriage is harder than I expected. The admission surprised me. Vanessa rarely acknowledged struggles or mistakes. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, meaning it. Despite everything, she was still my sister. Are you? Sorry, I mean. Her eyes met mine, searching. After what we did to you, I wouldn't blame you if you were happy we're struggling. I'm not happy about it, I said carefully. What you did hurt me deeply, and I'm still working through that. But I don't want either of you to be miserable. She nodded slowly. That's very mature of you. I'm working on it, I replied with a small smile. Setting boundaries while maintaining connections, my therapist calls it. Maybe I should see a therapist, she muttered, almost to herself. It helps, I offered. I could give you Dr. Bennett's number if you want. Vanessa looked startled, then thoughtful. Maybe. I'll think about it. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was a beginning. A small step toward a new kind of relationship, one based on honesty rather than competition. 3 months later, at my parents' anniversary party, Maxwell surprised me by getting down on one knee in their backyard, surrounded by twinkling lights and the people who had known me longest. Paige Williams, he said, looking up at me with those warm eyes that had first captured my attention. I know we haven't been together long by conventional standards, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life than I am about us. The ring he offered was nothing like the one Cameron had given me. Where that had been a traditional diamond solitaire, this was unique, a sapphire surrounded by smaller diamonds in a vintage-inspired setting. I'm not asking you to rush into anything, Maxwell continued. We can have the longest engagement in history, if that's what you want. I just want the world to know that I choose you, today, and every day forward. Will you marry me? The moment was perfect in its honesty. No grand gestures designed for social media, no elaborate staging, just a man I had come to love deeply, offering a future together. Yes, I said without hesitation. But I do want a long engagement. How long? He asked as he slipped the ring onto my finger. Long enough to be sure, I said. Long enough to build something real. We've already started, he replied, rising to kiss me as my family applauded around us. Later that evening, as we drove home, I reflected on the unlikely path that had brought us here. 6 months ago, I had been devastated by betrayal, convinced my life was falling apart. Now I was heading toward a future brighter than the one I'd lost. Penny for your thoughts? Maxwell asked, reaching for my hand across the console. I was just thinking about how sometimes the worst things lead to the best things, I said, watching the city lights blur past. If Vanessa hadn't sent that wedding invitation, I'd like to think we would have found each other anyway, Maxwell said. Maybe at another charity event, or through mutual friends. You think so? I know so. He squeezed my hand. Some people are meant to find each other, regardless of the path. As we planned our future together over the coming months, I came to believe he was right. The betrayal that had once seemed like the end of my world had actually been the beginning of something authentic and strong. I had learned to value myself, set healthy boundaries, and open my heart to genuine love. My sister had stolen my fiancé and sent me a wedding invitation, thinking it would be the final victory in our lifelong competition. Instead, it had become the first page of the best chapter of my life. A chapter written not in spite, competition, or revenge, but in self-discovery, growth, and love. Sometimes, it turns out, the most unexpected invitations lead to the most beautiful destinations. So if you've ever faced betrayal or heartbreak and wondered if happiness is still possible, let me assure you it is. Sometimes even greater happiness than you had before. Have you ever had something painful turn into an unexpected blessing? Share your story in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more stories, and share with someone who might need this message today. Remember, sometimes what feels like an ending is actually just the beginning of something better. Thank you for coming along on this journey with me, and I wish you all the courage to turn your own painful chapters into beautiful new beginnings.